Yo guys, what is up? Here we are with another reading video, and today we are on chapters 13 and 14 of The Boys Who Challenged Hitler by Philip Hoos. So, if you didn't already know, you should know because you should have, when you want to click the subscribe button, should have seen that we're over 250 subscribers. That is unreal. We hit 200 subscribers in November. That is crazy to me because it took me 2 years to hit 100 subscribers. I can't thank you guys enough for subscribing, and obviously it's only 50 from 200, but that's a fourth of a way to 1,000, and that's a big deal, and that's the hardest fourth. And just thank you for subscribing, and if you're not subscribed, definitely go hit the subscribe button, and hit that like button too. And I guess you can't hit notifications because of YouTube's child protection rule, which is a cool rule. I don't want to get kicked off because I said it was a bad rule, but it's annoying sometimes. Okay, so without further ado, let's get right into it. Chapter 13, Walls and Windows. Nunn Peterson. Escape was on our mind from the very start. We were not helping our country resist the German occupation by remaining in confinement. Naturally, we tested every bar and brick and lock in that old jail. Even though we were supposed to surrender our clothing to the guards each night so we wouldn't escape, we started hoarding and hiding shirts and trousers. So certain were we that we would find some way out of there. The top of the outdoor jail yard looked like the best bet. Though the yard was enclosed by thick, high stone walls, the top was caped only by a thin wire net. If you could reach it, you could cut it. We were left unguarded during our two daily 30-minute outdoor sessions. We had time to work. One morning, I, the tallest, cut my hands and boosted Oof onto my shoulders. He scrambled to a standing position and then, steadying himself against the wall, fumbled in his pocket for the kitchen knife we had smuggled into the yard. In a minute, he had ripped a nice opening. The idea was that one of us would pull himself out through the hole, inch along the top of the wall, jump down into the prison commissioner's garden, and scoot on out. He would make contacts on the outside and find us a place to hide. Unfortunately, the very next day, one of the jailers walking across the yard glanced up and noticed a hole in the netting. That was the end of unguarded yard time. On to Plan B. Our ultimate goal was Sweden. The Nazis, for some reason, had allowed Sweden to be officially neutral. That meant if you could get there, you were safe, at least until the Nazis changed their minds. In some parts of Denmark, near Copenhagen, you could easily see Sweden from our shore. It was a very short boat ride away. It would, however, be much harder to get there from Aalborg, where we would have to first clear the heavily guarded shore and then proceed another 6 to 8 hours into Swedish waters. In either case, the challenge would be to find a captain who would risk going over, which would probably take underground contacts and probably money, of which we had neither at the moment. Neutral Sweden. At night, while Danes and Norwegians covered their windows with black sheets and lit their streets with blue lights that couldn't be seen from the air, nearby Sweden appeared to be a carnival of light. Swedes took an officially neutral position in the war, meaning they didn't take sides. Sweden played on both teams. On one hand, the whole German military effort depended on weapons made from millions of tons of iron ore, which Sweden exported to Germany through Norwegian harbors and the Gulf of Bothnia. On the other hand, Sweden defied Germany by taking in war refugees, most notably the great majority of Denmark's Jews in October 1943, hours before a planned German roundup. It was logical that Sweden was the planned escape destination for the Churchill Club. Our plan was to hide in the legendary Thingbisk limestone cavern about 20 miles south of Aalborg. It had been purchased by a businessman who mined chalk out of a portion of it, but there was still plenty of corners to tuck ourselves away in for a few days. Our only neighbors would be the countless bats that hung from the ceilings by day and poured from the cave in chattering clouds at dusk. Like the bats, at least we would be free. To arrange help on the outside, my sister Gertrude smuggled our messages to Borg's older sister Preben. He was a classmate of Jens at school, a well-dressed, big-talking kind of guy who repeatedly tried to convince Jens to make us stop our sabotage activities. Preben had been present at the first Churchill Club meeting, but he had never returned. He seemed horrified that his little brother had fallen in with Jens and me, as if we had corrupted poor innocent Borg. Still, he had helped us in the past, and we thought we could trust him. One visitation day, we gave Gertrude a letter for Preben describing our escape plan. We asked Preben to deliver an enclosed letter Jens had written to the mine owner, seeking permission for us to stay in his mine until we could work something else out. Our final words to Preben were, "Burn this letter." He was supposed to relay the owner's reply back to us through Gertrude. Instead, he took our request straight to his parents. They were basically outraged. Gertrude soon brought us a letter from Privy that basically said, "You guys are out of your minds. I'll have nothing to do with this idiocy. If you persist on this escape fantasy, I myself will turn you over to the police to save your lives. I'll think of something when time is right. Sit tight." But we didn't just sit tight. How could we? Early on the morning of July 17th, 1942, none of the other boys were jolted away by the jingling of keys and the gruff command, "Get dressed." Nod Peterson. They had placed our very best clothing on the stool outside the cell door. That could mean only one thing. The judge's verdict was ready. After 9 weeks in the local jail, we would now learn of our future, where we were to be executed, handed over to the Germans, freed, or had the Danes and Germans made some sort of deal for us to be punished in Denmark. Now we would find out. We were ushered into vans and driven to court. Through our windows, we observed trees now in full leaf, shading women in summer dresses and men in shirt sleeves. We inhaled the beautiful aroma of hot pastries sold from corner kiosks. German wagons filled with soldiers rattled down toward the waterfront. Our guards let us into the guard room. I had no idea what our fate would be. I certainly had no regrets for what I had done, except that I had been captured. I doubt my mates did either. We were patriots. Our enemies were the Germans who had stolen our nation and the Danes who had stood by and let them take it. Our heroes were still the Norwegians who continued to fight bravely and the outnumbered British pilots who heroically defended their country from the Nazis' relentless aerial attack. We were at war, and I was simply a soldier who had been captured. I was prepared for any outcome. The courtroom already held the morning heat. The German monitor was at his table, face expressionless, uniform pressed, notebook open. Judge Anderson rode with the yellow paper in his hand and called us to approach his desk. Our prosecutor and our defense lawyer climbed to their feet as well. The judge read out our names and charges against us: wanton destruction of property, arson, theft of weapons for the German army. He pronounced us all guilty as charged. We were to be punished by imprisonment in Nyborg State Prison, an adult penitentiary, southeast of Odense, nearly 200 miles away. He did not say when we would be transferred. We each got different sentences, depending on our age and the number of counts against us. The scorecard read as follows: Nud Peterson, 3 years for 23 counts. Jens Peterson, 3 years for 8 counts. But he was 18 months older than I, so he and I got the same. Wait. Jens was older. This is Nud talking, if that confused you. Uffe Darkett, 2 years and 6 months for 6 counts. Egil Astrup Fredrickson, 2 years for 8 counts. Mogens Fijelerp, 2 years for 8 counts. Hedge Milo, 1 year and 6 months for 9 counts. Mogens Thompson, 1 year and 6 months for 4 counts. Our 3 older colleagues from Brønderslev received longer sentences because they were adults in their 20s. Their sentences were: Nud Hornbow, 5 years for 1 count, passing the grenades to us. Kaj Holberg, 5 years for 1 count, same. Alf Holberg, 4 years and 6 months for 4 counts. We were also sentenced to pay court costs, such as the expense of employing our brilliant defender, Grunwald. In addition, Jens, Alf, and I were ordered to repay the German army for all the property we destroyed. The tab was exactly 1,860 million kroner, or 12,538 Reichsmarks. And then there's a headline that says in German that I can't read. Actually, it might be Danish. I don't know. I can't read it. Basically saying 7 school children imprisoned for sabotage. That would have been, the fine that they had to pay was roughly $400,000 today. No problem, we thought. We'll have a check to you in the Morning Post. According to Danish law, we would be eligible for parole after 2/3 of our sentence had been served. 2 years and a month in my case and Jens. The instant Judge Anderson banged his gavel and dismissed the case, Grunwald came up to us waving his arms, stuck his florid face close to ours, shouting, "Now do you regret it? Now do you regret it? You sure as beep do." As we were leaving the courtroom, Judge Anderson called my name and beckoned me back to his desk. There were tears on his eyelashes and his voice caught as he spoke. "I learned of your attempt to escape from the jail," he said. "I've done everything I could for you. Please promise for one thing. For your own good, Nud, don't try to escape again." Family visitation day came just after the prisoners were sentenced. There was a big turnout, not surprising since it might be the last time the last they would see each other for a long time. The authorities let the boys mingle as a group in the jail's front room. Christine pastry shop sent over cream pies, relatives brought food, smokes, and reading material. Given the circumstances, it was just as festive as jail gets. Ned Peterson. At one point, as prisoners and family members embraced, Alf's younger brother, Tej, slipped Alf a magazine. Inside was a hacksaw blade, about 14 inches long. By the time a guard asked to see the magazine, Alf had already concealed the sharp, supple blade, dropping it into a hole in his back pocket that he had cut the week before when Tej told him to expect the tool. Later, waving goodbye, he walked into his cell. We had another chance. Jens and Alf, now cellmates, set to work that very afternoon, forcing a slender blade back and forth against the square metal bar proved to be slow and noisy work. They could only work by daylight, for there was a strict bedtime curfew and mandatory silence at night. Alone in the cell next to them, I tried to provide as much noise as I could. I became a drummer, improvising long sessions with spoons on a metal cake box. Together, we Churchill clubbers howled every song we knew through the window bars in our cells. There were all sorts of songs about Hitler and his henchmen. One went, "First we grappled Göring by his big fat cows. Then we knocked down Goebbels. We don't do things by halves. We'll dangle Hitler from a rope, right beside Ribbentrop. Look how stupid, all in line. 1, 2, 3, 4, Nazi swine." With transfer to state prison looming at some unknown date just around the corner, Jens and Alf worked like demons, sawing for our freedom. We had no way of knowing when we'd be moved. Days, weeks, months. We just knew we wanted to get out of there before the bus came to take us away. The task wasn't simply to cut out a section of the central bar in the cell window. We wanted to replace the bar so that no one could notice it was missing during daylight hours. Jens ingeniously constructed the perfect mechanism, a dummy bar with a wooden pin on one end that fit into a slot in the bar. If a guard happened to pull on the bar during our weekly inspection, it would remain firm. The guard would have to push, which was unlikely, for it to move. It was a brilliant device. We would keep the bar on the window during daylight hours, and Jens and Alf could pass in and out of the jail at night. In this way, we would continue with sabotage work at night and work out an escape for the entire group without detection. By early September, we had opened up a section of the central bar big enough for a slender boy to pass through, but the color of the wooden pin was too light. It didn't match the rest of the bar, so during yard time, we took a stick and smashed the window. The next day, when a guard replaced the broken pane, we scraped some of the wet caulking used to secure the pane in place. We applied it to our bar and painted it over with black ink we had in our cell. It was perfect. And then, just after work on the bar was completed and just before we had a chance to try it out, the keys jangled again and my cell door swung open. The guard ordered me to rise and get dressed. I looked around. It was still pitch dark. What was this? At 5 o'clock on that September morning, none of the other boys were on a bus, each of them handcuffed to a guard, motoring towards Nyborg State Prison. The authorities had spirited them away from Algorn in the dead of night so that outraged citizens would not have time to organize a protest on their behalf. On the bus were only 6 cathedral students and Ulf. The Holberg brothers and Nud Hornbow had been left behind. The boys rumbled through first morning light toward a bleak, faraway address with their friends and families receding behind them. It was about noon when the bus swung off the highway and they got their first glimpse of their new home. As Churchill Club members, they had spent nearly a year striking rapidly, spinning out of harm's way, and mocking the authorities from a safe distance. One look at Nyborg State Prison told the boys that they had finally run out of cards to play. Chapter 14. At Large Again. And there's a picture of this caption, close-up of King Hans Gade's jail window with dummy bar. Chapter 14. At Large Again? October 1942. Danish police and prison authorities scratched their heads as they tried to make sense of the new wave of attacks on German property in Aalborg, especially cars. One German roadster was found in the fjord, tipped over on his side like a beached whale. Investigators determined that somebody must have started the engine without using a key, driven at high speed down the harbor, and leaped out just before the auto shot out over the wharf like a missile. The German military was stirred up once again. "Get this solved at once," they harumphed. "Or else we will." It seemed as if everything was back at square one. Who could have done such a thing? All the young Churchill Club boys from Cathedral School had been transferred to Nyborg State Prison. The 3 older prisoners, Alf, Kaj Holberg, and Nud Hornbow, were still locked in King Hans Gade's jail in Aalborg. In fact, now they were together in a single cell. Guards squinting through the peephole observed the 3 young men reading, chatting, piecing together model airplanes, and playing chess. They seemed to yawn and nap a lot, but jail life was hardly exciting. The three cellmates settled down for the night like everybody else in the building when lights were out, or at least that's how it looked. There was a picture with the caption explaining and labeling the three older men. But as it happened, the cell they inhabited was the one with the dummy bar. When darkness and silence settled over the jail, the three became alert as cats. They got up, fished their shirts and trousers behind the bed, and scrambled into their clothes. Each night, Alf laid a piece of paper on a stool in the center of the cell. On it, he scribbled his parents' telephone number and a brief message to the Janus jailers. "Please don't call the police," it read. "Call this number when we return immediately." Alf usually went out first. He climbed onto a chair, removed the dummy bar, squeezed through the opening, and crawled onto an awning in front of the window. Next came Nud Hornbow, who was a little pudgy. Halfway through the opening on his first attempt, he got stuck. He tried not to cry out in fear or pain. Alf pulled him from the outside, and Kaj pushed him from the inside until they finally got him out, spraining his arm in the process. Kaj slid out with ease. The rest was simple. They crawled out into the wire mesh above the outdoor yard, dropped into the prison orchard. Then, after concealing themselves in dense shrubbery until they knew everything was clear, they stepped onto the street as free men. Ned Hornbow and the Holbrook brothers escaped 19 nights in a row. The trio got so used to leaving prison that one day they left too early and found themselves uncomfortably out on the streets in broad daylight. They ducked into a movie theater and took seats. Once their eyes adjusted to the darkness, they found they were seated among German soldiers, enjoying a weekly newsreel of German battlefield heroics. The escaped prisoners' nightly routine seldom varied. First, they continued the work of the Churchill Club, smashing the instrument panels of unguarded German roasters and setting them ablaze. When they were finished, three walked to the Holbrook home and ate dinner with Alf and Kaj's family. The first night shock of seeing the boys at the front door soon gave way to elation and scheming. The boys now set to work trying to find a boat that would take them to Lindford and sail them to Sweden. On the 19th night of freedom, the young men bade the Holbrooks goodbye and started back towards the jail. As they walked, they agreed it had been a lovely night. They had found and decommissioned a stylish German roadster, shortening out its electrical system. Dinner had been a festive occasion, with good food and voices raised in song. Old friends had passed in and out of their open door. They had all waved Norwegian and Danish flags. Best of all, Mr. Holbrook announced that a boat had been identified whose captain appeared to be interested in taking them to Sweden. "Be ready," Mr. Holbrook had said. "It could happen any day now." And then, as they walked through the chilly morning air, a siren shattered Alborg's pre-dawn silence. They froze in mid-step. The streets were nearly empty at 4 a.m., so the three young men stood out conspicuously. As the siren screamed, their minds flooded. What should they do? Run for home? Run for jail? It was too far to reach either. They were supposed to go to an ale shelter during an air alert, but shelter authorities always asked for identification cards. Theirs had been confiscated at jail. The trio ducked into an entranceway of a nearby building to gather their thoughts and make a plan. 2 police officers detected their movement. One showed his flashlight into the dark recesses and found 6 rabbit-red eyes. "May I see your identity cards?" he asked. Soon everyone was at the police station, where stunned officers recognized but could no longer protect the 3 escape artists. German soldiers took them into custody and rounded up the rest of the Holbrook family. Interrogators quickly cleared up the mystery of the destroyed German property. Alf and Kaj Holbrook and Nud Hornbow were swiftly tried and convicted in German military court and transported to a German prison. Each received a sentence of more than 10 years. Danish officials loudly protested. Crimes allegedly committed by Danes on Danish soil were to be prosecuted by Danes. That was the agreement they had made. Denmark insisted that the 3 be returned, but German authorities weren't budging. They accused the Danish police chief of being in on the dummy window bar. Prisoners couldn't have done something like that alone, they charged. It would have made too much noise. They had to have had help. Either way, the Churchill Club was now completely sidelined. For 10 months, from marking walls with blue paint to twisting signs to stealing weapons and destroying important German assets, Denmark's first occupation resistors had bedeviled their protectors and awakened the courage of many Danes. With the Bondersliff 3 in German captivity and the younger 7 locked up in Nyborg, for now at least, it seemed the Churchill Club was history. And that is the end of chapter 14. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure to leave a big thumbs up, comment down below, and don't forget, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next video.